StephenDKing, Grave New World, The End of Globalization, The Return of History. Globalization was once hailed as the economic utopia destined to unite the world and reduce disparities between rich and poor countries. But the events of recent years have painted a different picture. StephenDKing's Grave New World, The End of Globalization, The Return of History, unravels the harsh economic realities and widening wealth gaps that have emerged. The book highlights the shifting political landscape responding to a disillusioned public, amidst the collapse of an economic order relying on free trade and open borders. Dive into a thought-provoking account of how globalization's failure has led to rising populism, changing political dynamics, and a profound reshaping of our world.
The Flaws of Globalization. For a time, globalization seemed like the answer to world poverty. However, recent geopolitical realities have exposed its flaws. While the rich continue to prosper, everyone else struggles to stay afloat. The financial crisis of 2008 was the tipping point that shattered the illusion that globalization was a panacea. The backlash against the economic order of free trade and open borders has been strong, with populist politicians and disgruntled voters leading protests. Even in Europe, where income gaps are smaller, enthusiasm for globalization has cooled. History shows that economic might and political power are fleeting, and globalization is no exception. Shifting global power. The history of empires teaches us that no version of globalization endures forever. America's leadership in globalization could disintegrate, as the world continues to move toward multiple rivalries. Economic shifts align with the search for better allocation of resources. History has taught us that idealizing economic models can lead to missed flaws. Misled optimism and economic disruption. The book highlights the dangers of misguided optimism in political and economic realities, as illustrated by the failed U.S. invasion of Iraq and other instances. It explores the evolution of economic orthodoxy, the faith in free market capitalism as the solution to economic challenges, and the risks of assuming permanent prosperity. The book questions the notion that risk and uncertainty are the same, examining how changes in economic tastes and peer pressure can influence conventional wisdom. Ultimately, the book argues that optimism, when misplaced, can lead to disruption and financial instability. The unequal consequences of globalization. The aftermath of the financial crisis has made it clear that the rewards of globalization have not been distributed evenly, and the wounds have also been disproportionate. The rich got richer while the poor got poorer, and bankers who played a part in the crash didn't face any consequences. The economic status quo has been shaken, and social stability has been undermined in the United States and Europe. While globalization was supposed to lift all boats, the reality is more complex. The concentration of large fortunes in a few hands, the disappearing of blue-collar jobs, and dwindling unionization are among the reasons for lower-rung workers' declining incomes. The uneven results of globalization are evident at events like the World Economic Forum, where the elites gather, praise globalization, and receive outsized stock compensation. Globalization, populism, and immigration. The backlash against globalization and immigration has fueled the rise of populism around the world. Voters fed up with policies that benefit the wealthy few have turned to politicians with extreme views. The tension around globalization is also linked to the resentment towards immigration, and recent waves of refugees have created rifts among European nations. In recent years, there has been a growing wave of populism around the world fueled by the sense that government policies only benefit the wealthy few while leaving everyone else behind. Politicians like Marine Le Pen in France, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in the United States have all tapped into this sentiment with varying degrees of success. Even Hillary Clinton, who positioned herself as a moderate, struggled to convince voters she was in touch with their needs. The root of this resentment can be traced back to globalization, which has made it easier for capital to flow across borders but has also created challenges for workers and communities who have been left behind. The free trade ethos, which once linked the fate of impoverished workers in China with middle-class citizens in the developed world, has been questioned by those who believe it has only served to enrich a few at the expense of many. The tension around globalization is closely linked to the issue of immigration, which was the original source of global integration. In the early days of the Industrial Revolution, human capital moved from one part of the world to another in the form of slaves and later European economic migrants. The US, for instance, relied on high levels of immigration to fuel its growth, but this led to a wave of anti-immigrant sentiment during World War I. More recently, migration from Latin America has changed the demographic landscape of the US, while the Syrian civil war has caused millions of refugees to flee to Europe. This has created new challenges for European nations who have had to grapple with how to respond to the influx of refugees. Some, like Germany, have tried to welcome them, while others have taken a more restrictive approach. The result has been tension between nations and a rise in populist sentiment, particularly on the right. In sum, the backlash against globalization and immigration has fueled the rise of populism around the world. While these issues are complex, they are all closely interlinked. Unless policymakers find ways to address the concerns of those who feel left behind, this wave of populism is likely to continue reshaping politics in many countries around the world. Trump, Corbyn, and Sanders, the rise of populism. Globalization has lost its steam, leading to a political shift that has disrupted many. Established politicians stick to mild policies, while disruptive politicians like Trump, Corbyn, and Sanders use social media to make attention-grabbing statements. They have taken over mainstream political parties by drawing in rogue movements' followers. Populism connects these mavericks who are against globalization. Trump, for example, gained popularity on a platform that involves less free trade, stricter policies against China, and more rigid control on immigration. These policies do not necessarily benefit the common man, as the right often backs policies that favor large corporations and leave out everyday workers. Populism is now a dominant political position and a force to be reckoned with in the post-globalization era. The rise of China and the evolution of globalization. Chinese President Xi Jinping highlighted in his 2017 Davos speech that globalization isn't solely a Western ideal, and as the US loses economic power, China and other nations will form alliances and rivalries. A train trip between Yiwu and Madrid allows goods to be transported in 2 weeks, compared to 2 months by sea. The course of globalization has shifted drastically in history and may see China as a more prominent global force in the future.
StephenDKing's Grave New World dismantles the myth that globalization would usher in a fairer, more equal world. Instead, it exposes the growing economic and social disparities stemming from a system that, despite its grand promises, has largely benefited an elite few. As a result, citizens around the world have revolted against the status quo, giving rise to populist politicians who awaken anti-establishment sentiments. This has led to a broader shift in political power dynamics, where Western-led globalization is no longer seen as the ideal path. While the world continues to grapple with the consequences of these changes, it is important to recognize and address the root causes of inequality and dissatisfaction, to create a more just and cohesive global society.